Hi there, Dr. Paul Donovan here, and today we're talking about something so close to my heart because it's really the underlying secret behind those who use their power really well, and what we're talking about is personal power. So the issue of power use is central to how well leaders perform. It's absolutely critical. It's often not discussed directly, but it's central. Leaders are often not using their power consciously, and as a result, they're creating sense of disengagement, of alienation, of creating malaise in their teams because they're using their power unconsciously. Why are they doing that? Well, I'd like to suggest to you that it's at least partly, and I would argue in good part, because they're not considering their personal power. And out of a lack of personal power, they're actually utilizing the power in their role ineffectively. So let's start with a little theory. So a good deal of most people's day, they're experiencing what I call low power feelings. So there's the feelings of anxiety, maybe resentment, overwhelm, exasperation, irritation, worry. So these are the experience of many of us during the day for a good deal of our day. It doesn't take much to notice this. You can walk around most offices, anywhere, wherever you work, and notice that people are experiencing most of the time subtle or not so subtle experiences of low power feelings. And in alternative, there are what you call high power feelings. So these are feelings which we do experience, but less frequently. Feelings of spaciousness, confidence, curiosity, appreciation. So these are high power and low power feelings. And where we are during the day and where we spend a good deal of the time has massive implications on how we behave. Huge. But I want to draw your attention to the first place. Where are you? If you were really honest with yourself, how much of the day are you feeling somewhat uncomfortable? Are you having somewhat negative feelings? And if you do, then you're not up here, you're down there. And what does it mean if you have low power feelings? What does it mean if you're feeling a lot of the day like this or very little of the day like that? Well, here's what it means. You see, what it means is if you have low power feelings a lot of the day, it means this. It means the complexity of your environment has outstretched the complexity of your mind. So what that means is at work is you may have demands from a boss that wants one thing, demands of your team that want another, and they both seem so radically different and you're trapped. You don't know how to meet that demand and that at the same time. You feel stressed, for instance. Or maybe even just different clients want different things. Or maybe they want the same thing all at the same time and you're anxious. And so if you're in that kind of scenario and you feel anxious, at that moment, the complexity of your environment and how many different demands that are upon you is outstretching the complexity of your mind to manage it. And as a result, you've gone into anxiety. You've gone into overwhelm, resentment. If you're where you have that enormous complexity of demands upon you, but you still feel a certain level of ease, you may be working hard, but there is a sense of spaciousness and curiosity about what's going on around you and how best to manage these competing requirements upon you, then your complexity of mind is at least matching the complexity of your environment. Can you see the radical difference here? See the radical difference? Some of us spend a good deal of our time trying to make sure our jobs never outmatch the complexity of our mind. So, and if you stay in a relatively junior role, there's a chance you'll never experience this. But if you go to a role that's more senior or if you get promoted, bingo. Right now I have a daughter who's around 28 and she's been promoted into a role into a large senior teaching hospital where she works. And she's experiencing quite a bit of anxiety. Now, I have a son who's a little younger than her, who works as an accountant. That's not his experience. But his role doesn't have as many competing demands. Nowhere near it. So he's got relatively high power feelings during the day. So it goes to what is the complexity of environment you're in and does your mind match? Right now, her mind is just learning to match the complexity of her environment. So where do we go to from here? You see, if that's the case for you, then the outcome will be this. The outcome will be that you will spend a great deal of your time just putting out fires. If you're in anxiety or if you're in worry or resentment, you'll be addicted to looking at the current reality as it is and trying to make sure bad stuff doesn't happen. You'll simply be in reactive zone. You'll simply be reactive. Survival mode, trying to prove yourself every day at work. Proving yourself. Addicted to the reality as it is and trying to make sure it doesn't get any worse. If you have more chronic high power feelings, then you are free to devote yourself to what are the real objectives of your role, to create something that's not there yet, to be purpose driven, actually to create something that excites you, to actually give your attention to something that feels joyous, that might even be done out of a sense of appreciation or love. So this is what you're free to do if you're operating from high power feeling. But we don't feel so free to do that if most of our day we're in low power feelings. That's when we become reactive. That's where we become trying to just make sure we're actually playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. We're trying to make sure more bad stuff doesn't happen. All right, so you ready? Now we're going to transition to personal power and how personal power relates to all of this, because it's a moment-by-moment choice. You see, if you're a manager and you've got rank, then you are faced especially with the dilemma of which door you're going to knock on to get some relief from these feelings. How are you going to get relief? Because all the time we're looking to get ourselves some relief from this anxiety or worry or exasperation or overwhelm. So if you are the boss, then you can draw on your rank to give you some relief. You can march into a room and bark out orders to people if you want. You can be intimidating. You can be even controlling. And if you do so, you're going to get temporary relief from your anxiety, but it's just going to drop right down again. It doesn't work in any sustained way. You see, that's the choice you're making. It's a moment-by-moment choice to understand how you're utilizing your rank, the access and the freedom you have in being a manager, in the behavior you choose to give you freedom from these low-power feelings. And so whether it means that you're going to start associating with people that you feel more comfortable with, or whether it means you just completely submerge yourself in your role and forget to give feedback to your team, or you just become, as I mentioned before, more intimidating. Whatever it is, all of those behaviors give you temporary relief from low power feelings, but only temporarily. They drop away again. That's the door you choose that's using your rank to give you relief. But it's not a great long-term solution. The other door is to build your personal power. So finally, we're getting to the punchline now. We're getting to the punchline because building your personal power is the only real sustainable, portable way to build your access to these great feelings day by day. So let's move through these now. There are 3 aspects of personal power that Dr. Julie Diamond brought to our attention in her work, and she draws on this rich resource base and practice of process work with Dr. Arnie Mindell and Dr. Max Schubach and others, and I love this work. Let's have a quick look at it. Do you want to build your personal power? Do you want to build more ways of gaining access to high power feelings without having to change your environment to get them? That's what we're really talking about here. How can you feel good no matter what your environment is? Because really good leaders look to sustain these high power feelings without trying to manipulate their environment to achieve them. So let's just go a little deeper into each one. Are you with me? Let's keep going. And we're getting there. First of all, building a sense of capable. I want to give you a couple of secrets here. I want to let you know that your sense of power is distributed across various realms. For instance, I'd like you just to consider your last time at work, maybe your last few months. Consider, when did you bring your sense of expertise? That you have a certain expertise that may be unique, is built up on years, that was really helpful. Expertise that others didn't have, perhaps. that enabled you to resolve a problem? Or maybe a sense of knowledge. Did you just know something? Was a time when your book learning really brought it home? You knew something because you've devoted to building a knowledge in a certain area that others just haven't given those hours to. Or what about experience? Quite different, isn't it? Experience is when you've just been doing that job for a while that gives you a kind of a raw know-how to know the trips and traps, the tips and the traps of doing things one way to another, and where you brought your power of experience to bear. Or maybe you have power in your way of managing relationships. Are you really good at just helping people connect or get over tensions, helping them pull together so that they can get past the problematic dynamic and move on towards what they want to create? That's called relationship power. So I'm drawing your attention to expertise, to knowledge, experience, relationship power. These are all very important forms of power. And you know what? I'd like you to become aware of when you've used them, because it's so easy to forget. You know, one that's list that I didn't mention is, when have you used formal power? When did you use your rank really beautifully to create forums for people to come together, for instance? That's a wonderful use of power. And so what I want to ask you is, think now about when you did. Even pause this video for a moment if you like. When did you use any of those kinds of power? And when you've done that, I want to ask you, what did it feel like to use your power well? I have a feeling that if you become aware of that, you actually experience, at least temporarily, some of these high power feelings. And you haven't manipulated your environment to achieve it. So I'm going to ask you, this is a really great exercise to build your sense of capable self. To continue to remind yourself that you are powerful and that you can move towards the goals that are important to you by utilizing the powers that you have access to you. And you have all of those powers access to you. So that's building capable self. It's a wonderful exercise to routinely use. If you feel yourself coming down into those feelings of low power, pause and ask yourself, where have I used my authority well, my relationship power, my expertise, my knowledge, my experience, and begin to gain access to your high power feelings. Okay, now let's go on to the aware self. Now this is incredibly important. You see, if we don't know what triggers us to go into low power feelings, we're just held ransom by them. Leaders who use their power well have mapped this internal territory very, very well. They know what tends to trigger them. It's not that things don't trigger them anymore. Of course, we all get triggered. It's whether those triggers take our attention, subsume our focus, or whether we can be awake to them, aware of the pull to go into what's triggering us, and avoid. Do you know, sometimes when you walk into meetings, there's certain projects that are behind line that you get triggered into becoming anxious, and then you might become more short, more abrupt, barking orders a little less humane. Build a deep sense of purpose. Ask yourself, what's important to you in your life? List down your values. Simply ask yourself, what's important to me, and start writing. Start writing. Because once you become aware of that, then you can be aware of how your job may overlap. How actually good parts of your job are really a wonderful vehicle for you to do what's important to you. Of course, if you discover that what's really important to you is quite different to your job, you may have just unearthed one of the main reasons why you are chronically in low power feelings. Because your life is not orientated around the things which are truly important to you. So if you can, in fact, answer the question of why you are doing your job, why it's more important to do your job rather and not just screw up in it, just protect against screwing up in it, but why it's important for you to succeed beyond getting the next pay rise or beyond avoiding getting fired or beyond just making sure you can pay your mortgage off. You see, all those are survival thinking. That's the thinking we do when we have chronic low power feeling. But if you're at your job because you think, I get to help people, I get to really do something that's worthwhile here, then you're building from a greater sense of personal power. So reflect on this. Reflect on this. These three different means I've just going through are all different levels of reality and different levels of awareness, and they're all necessary for building personal power. If you build personal power, you can all by yourself live more persistently at that high power feeling that I was speaking about earlier. And you can avoid day-to-day being in low power feelings. And therefore you can avoid using your rank as your boss to try and alleviate low power feelings. And in doing so, misuse your power. You will not misuse your power and be tempted to if you can derive those feelings all by yourself, independent of your environment. So this is personal power. This is why it's so central to the issue of using your power well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please chat about it to others. There's a lot of great information in here, and I look forward to hearing from you. See you soon.